friend, and he also the CTO of John Snow Labs, and they're the folks behind Spark NLP. And David is going to present a session about question answering on text and tables and corporate responsibility reports. And I'm really looking forward to your presentation, David. You prefer?
Thank you. This or this?
Which one do you want?
I'll go with this. Okay.
Go a little bit that way, 'cause, yeah.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Let's see if this works. Sort of. My name is David Talby. My goal today is talking about one use case of what you can do where you need to understand a large body of long, complex, domain-specific documents. And specifically, we're going to talk about corporate responsibility reports. It's going to take a while today, huh? Let's see. Yes. Okay, and the corporate responsibility report is something that really most large corporations, definitely all public corporations today, publish, which is something that goes beyond financial performance to look at really kind of the role of a company in society. So what are they doing in terms of climate change, environmental impact, in terms of labor relations, in terms of helping the community, in terms of worker relationships, in terms of managing their waste, in terms of competitive practices, anti-bribery, those types of things. And there's a lot of interest around ESG, but there's also just a lot of interest in terms of compliance, right, where companies need to show in many places, in many cases, that yes, they're doing kind of what's reasonably expected, right, within their industry in terms of those types of things. The challenge is, of course, there's no template. These are usually highly graphic and visual documents, and they can easily be 100, 300, 500 pages long. And these are partly marketing document, so every company uses its own language and wants to highlight different things, right? So the reason to do things in different order or to spend 20 pages about on one thing versus one paragraph on another thing is because that's the story that the company wants to tell. Okay, but what you often want to do, you want to come and say, okay, look, I want to take all of these, 10,000 of these, 100,000 of these, and be able to start comparing companies, right, within a vertical and say, okay, really, what are they doing in terms of their commitment to climate change, right, to people migration, right, to union, dealing with unions. And to do that, it will get there eventually. Maybe. Can someone help push? I know there's something we need to do there. To do this, there are three parts to what you need to do. First, you need to be able to read this document. Let's see if it would help or not. No. Here. You need to be able to do three things. First, you need to be able to read these documents, right? And those are visual documents, so it's not just NLP. There's also a computer vision component there. And we'll talk a bit about some of the algorithms there. You need to be able to combine different algorithms in a pipeline to do this well. Then there's an information extraction stage. Basically, you need to actually read the documents, put them into a knowledge base, understand what's there, and especially normalize the content, because, as we said, different companies use different language. And then you want to start looking at really how do you do question answering, how do you do summarization, right? And that's kind of where LLMs come into play. So one thing. It's just going where it goes. Just a moment. Let's see what we can do here. Okay. Here we go. So one thing about John Snow Labs. So John Snow Labs, yes, we are the team behind Spark NLP. We build a lot of healthcare, not just healthcare specific, kind of vertical specific language models. So we have probably more than 10,000 models we build specifically for healthcare, for finance, and for the legal spaces. Okay, and now what we've done in the past few months, we've built healthcare-specific, finance-specific, legal-specific LLMs to do specific tasks. Okay, and really our main promise to the industry is really to all our customers, we will keep you the state of the art. And a lot of the part we play in the ecosystem is we productize research, right? So now every day someone comes and says, oh, here's my paper /model/library/something, and it's better in some way. Our job is to actually test it. And as you know, very often those claims, they do not reproduce, they do not generalize, right? You cannot use them for a variety of reasons, but our goal to come and say, look, if you can, we'll give you the production grade, scalable, secure version of it. We'll keep tuning it, we'll keep updating kind of the data sets, the LLMs today, and make it work for you. So that's the context, and that's why we do this. This is super hard.
It's a special effect.
It's a very special effect. Yes. You need more GPUs running the PowerPoint.
And I think they have wireless connections, so the data just not transmitting the data fast enough.
Probably.
I'm a data guy.
I see. Yes, there are easy problems like AI and hard problems like presentations and definitely Wi-Fi and conference. So, visual document understanding, once it lets us. This is not even in the same vicinity of where we need to be. No. Okay. So we have a document and we like to start reading it. The simplest thing you want to do is just to be able to extract the text. Okay, so this is kind of your classic OCR, or even just reading a digital PDF and putting it through. And that's something that is available, and some of these PDFs you can do that. But that is, of course, kind of not very interesting by itself. It's just a step, and it gives you a very partial view. The most interesting things in those kind of documents are going to be in images or figures, mostly because this is what companies really want to highlight. Right? This is like, this is our big, carbon capture project, right? This is our big, new set of benefits, right, for these kind of employees, right? Those things, for that, you do need multimodal models, right, that are able to look at pie chart, bar charts, right, these kind of images, and be able to extract information and put into a table. Another set of models that you'd want as part of your pipeline are models that are just able to find and understand the tables. If we're allowed to get to that slide. So with tables, there's the computer vision aspect, which is finding that there is a table on the page, right? Just identify. That's not a very hard problem by itself. What is harder is usually finding the rows and columns of a table, because tables sometimes have pivot tables, sometimes have missing values, sometimes have they use shading, they use like pivot tables, they use other things. So usually there's a computer vision problem to really understand where the rows and the columns are. And then what you want is you want to be able to extract those tables really into a data frame, right? So you can really start asking SQL level questions about the data. Okay, and especially if you're dealing with financial statement, financial documents, especially when you're doing comparison, this will be the most interesting information, right, that you'd be interested in. And of course, as you'd expect it, in some of the most visually appealing documents that you will find, it's going to be really hardest to extract this, because sometimes really companies actually go out of the way to make it hard to extract this automatically. The next kind of models that you want to be able to using, there's a new class of models that kind of the zero-shot multimodal models that can directly answer questions about things like, this started with forms, receipt, tickets, those kind of things. But now the zero-shot capability have evolved greatly, so that you can just directly do question answering for example, on visual documents. So if you look at this example on the screen, right? So you look at the image on the left, and if you look at it, you can say, okay, this looks like an agenda for an event. And it doesn't say it's an agenda for an event, but look, it has two columns, and it has times on the left, and it has things that, it looks like a title and a speaker on the right. So you can assume that. What you want a model where you give it this question: when is the coffee break? Okay, as a string, and you just want to get the answer as a string. Okay, but to do that, the model needs to be pre-trained and understand the fact that, okay, look, this is probably an agenda. Okay, so the coffee break is probably an event that happens in the agenda, and the time is probably going to be the time to the left of it, because that's really how these things work. and then it can read it and just give you that as a string. Okay, and now really what we are seeing is that with more and more types of specialized forms, right, or results or summary tables, you can just do that as a zero-shot thing, and it works actually remarkably well. If you tune these models, right, for example, for things like IRS forms, lab results, genetic results, financial statements, of course, it's going to work even better, right? In terms of really just direct question answering from the forms themselves. And this is how mostly we do things today. So like we used to have an OCR product, we just no longer call it that way, we call it that, we call it the visual NLP product, because most of the current state-of-the-art models are really just this kind of multimodal model where you don't OCR and then you try to understand the text, you just answer questions directly from the image. So that's the first phase. The first phase is really how you take the document and actually read it, right? So you need to be able to read all the kinds of information that's there. Once you have read it, you do have a kind of a pre-processing pipeline. We do not just go and send all of that to an LLM. It does not work well. It just does not work because there's just too much variety between those documents and there's still too many kinds of things that you want to ask about. So you want to give it more information and more context. So one thing that's highly useful, especially in very long documents, especially, for example, in legal documents, is classifying paragraphs or classifying sections, or in legal documents, it means really classifying clauses. Okay, so you want to be able to read a page or a paragraph and come say, oh, this is about labor relations, right? This is about waste management, right, of product. This is about product, electronic product recycling, right? Whatever would be the case. This is very important when you want to have any chance of correctly comparing these documents between different companies, because very often they use very different language, right, very different titles. But if you want to come and say, look, I want to see whether they're doing on the same thing, then you need to do this kind of classification. And right now there's just a lot of classes that kind of just with our finance NLP and also with the legal NLP, it just comes and it's just pre-trained. So this is just another area where you want to have domain experts, right? So people who are lawyers, people who are finance people who are MDs who help basically build this in advance. In terms of how you use them, these are pre-trained models. So really it's usually this kind of 2 lines of code to run it, right? So once you have the facts, the text, the images, what have you in this format, you can get the classes as well. Once you have the classes, the next thing you want to do is to extract some entities. And also, these are things, some people do this now with LLM, so they kind of skip this stage. What we have found is that still, yes, you will get much better accuracy if you extract this basically as metadata in advance. Okay, mostly because we are dealing in environments where really just people use very different language to say the same thing, very often on purpose. Okay, so having domain experts who actually build this model and know what to look for greatly helps. And in terms of NLP, there are 2 main tasks that you use here, which are name entity recognition and then relation extraction. So you want to be able to extract entities. Some of the examples are here, right? So environmental KPIs, percentages, amounts of money that move, relative dates, right? And there are quite a few of those models that are available, right? So you can look at labor relations, you can look at specific protected groups, right? Because the company may be able to do something about. Specifically, which stakeholders within the community you're talking about, right? So you're talking about your customers or your providers or your employees or your shareholders or other people and what you want to do with them. And what you want to do is you want to be able to really pre-process the data and basically enrich the text with this kind of additional metadata and this kind of normalization before you go to the question answering phase. Once you've done all that, and you have this kind of this pipeline that can do this before you start, you attempt to go to the next slide. This can take a while. Any questions? Yes.
So for the entity recognition, there was a library called Spacey. I don't know if you know it.
Yes, I'm a fan. Yes.
So is this based on that, but with a pre-trained model for financial statements or something like that? If I understood well.
Yes, I mean specifically, mostly we don't use Spacey. We use Spark NLP, right? We use our own stuff. People use a lot of Hugging Face for this. Yeah, those are usually the things we do.
Typically for finance.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So the key thing with all of those libraries is, yes, you want to have great state-of-the-art models, right? So you want to make sure you're using latest transformers, right? And so that's kind of your base. But yes, it has to be specific to the domain, right? So like if you just use BERT or FinBERT, you're not going to get state-of-the-art accuracy.
I agree because of the knowledge graph network that this generates is much better than what I have experienced with
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Space is definitely no longer state-of-the-art. But I would say whichever transformer you use, like you don't want to use any generic one. You definitely want to tune things to your domain. Yeah. The other thing we do also, we have kind of we have our own people doing this kind of building it from a lot of training data that we've built because really you need domain expert to do this. Okay, now we've done all this work. Now, okay, can we please just get some answers from the thing? One of the nice things that you can do with the large language model today is you can just ask the question in the conversational way, okay, and expect an answer, right? So instead of using SQL or using Python to ask your question, which of course you can still do, it's nice if you can just ask natural language questions and expect answers. And there are quite a few models that enable you to do that. So you can say which are the main energy producing countries, and can you please just tell me the answer in one of 100 languages that I expect you to speak nowadays, right? Whether to understand my questions or to give me my answer. And most importantly, show me where you got the answer, right? Explain your answer. And explaining answers is extremely important because most of the answers that we seek or that we see our experts looking for, especially when we're dealing with either doctors asking questions about patients or lawyers asking questions about legal documents, they're not simple factual questions. Okay, so it's not how much is 2 + 2, right? Or what's the capital of the United Kingdom, right? If I'm asking, what is our legal liability if we pull out of Russia and we don't give them the notice, right? It's not a yes or no question, right? It's here's the short answer, here's the full paragraph. And then, it's good that you have 20 years of actual legal experience to see what you can get away with, right? Or what you want to do, right? Similarly in healthcare, if you have a patient, and you're asking, what are the potential side effects of aspirin? It's useless if you just give me a bulleted list from the FDA, right? Because some of the things are very common, some of the things are very rare, some of the things are tied to only specific patients who have other things, right? So really what I want is, give me the short answers, but give me the sources, right? Because I want to read it. Right? You say, this is recommended in this situation. Show me the paper. I want to know if this was a study on 50,000 people over 10 years or 200 people in one hospital. Okay. Now another very important thing is that we do not. So in everything in healthcare, in finance, in legal, we do not actually fine-tune the LLM on the documents or on the enriched documents and have it answer questions. Okay. That just does not work for quite a few reasons. But mostly hallucinations, right? And if you want to ask a question about a document and it's usually right, but sometimes it's completely invented, it makes the whole application completely useless, right? It means that the human can just not use any answer, right? So that's usually a showstopper by itself. So what we do is basically split the system into 2 parts. Okay, we build a knowledge base. Okay, so we read the documents, and there are a lot of things that you can do which LLM still do not do because they're still mostly not multimodal. So we can look at figures, we can extract tables, we can correlate them, we can add the metadata. We put in a knowledge base. Then the only thing the LLM does when I ask a question, it forms a query to the knowledge base, right? We do the information retrieval approach. If it's there, I get an answer. If it's not there, the correct answer is you don't know. Okay, so please don't assume that you learned it somewhere else. And then the LLM formulates the answer for example, in English, if I'm in English. But then it can show me for each sentence where it came from, right? And then people can go and do the deep dive. So what you get, we do get higher accuracy, right? And we have published some benchmarks around question answering, around summarization, around de-identification, on information extraction, comparing to things like GPT-4 and ChatGPT and some of the open source LLM showing very significant accuracy gap, like 30-50% accuracy differences. Okay, which are not really surprising if you think about kind of the architecture there. Yes, this is domain-specific thing from the get-go. right? So the paragraphs are split correctly, right? I'm not just putting this into length chain. I actually have the meta there. It uses domain-specific transformers and model all the way through. That's one thing. You can explain every source, so every line can come like, where is this number coming from? It's come, look, this table. Page 42 of this document. Here, you want to see it? Yeah, you should probably look at it, read the caption, see if there's any fine print. Absolutely. It does not hallucinate by design. Okay, and the other important thing is just scale. Okay, so what you can do today, there are LLMs where you can load the 100-page document and you can ask questions about it. But this still takes, with the best one, this can take 2 or 3, 4 minutes to answer a question. Okay, and then if you come and say, no, I actually have like 500,000 of these, and I need to update them daily, right? And I want you to also answer on the most updated information. Then really this is not something you can have an LLM do. Okay, and another thing that people are looking for is not just the latency and the time, they're also looking at cost. Right, so come say, look, you're adding a nice question answering features. Feature here, like if I need to buy $1 million of hardware, just GPUs, just forget software, forget implementation. It's just not happening. Okay, so just really being able to run this efficiently is also a very important concept. Other than that, on top of the regular question answering, there are other types of models that you'll want to have. Coming up soon. One of them is table understanding or table question answering. Okay, so once you have data in tables, there are pretty good models today that enable you to ask kind of more interesting questions. Okay, so first of all, you just want to give it the table, give it the data, and then ask a question. Okay, look, what's the number of employees entitled to parental leave in Canada? Okay, which is it's a simple select some group by do some filtering. Okay, but the point is, look. Find the table, understand from the text around the table, right, from the column of the table, this is probably what this thing does. Run the thing and give me an answer. On top of it, you may want to ask things that are comparison queries. Okay, so what's the proportion of employees, right, that are entitled to this, right? The number is not in the table, it's a calculation or a derived field that you do on top of it, right? So you want to be able to compare 2 companies, compare 2 time periods, right? Really, so that kind of the super classic BI stuff that people do this kind of data. But the point is, if I'm, a business consumer of this data, like today I already have a natural language interface, which is I email my data analyst team, right? And I say, please run these comparisons. I don't know, find this data somewhere in the catalog. I don't know what you do, and put together what SQL or whatever it is you do. Just email me the answer, please, right? And at least the premise of LLMs is, to an extent, we should enable you to do the same thing. The key, of course, is no hallucinations, is keeping the privacy and security, right? So with us, all of our systems, they run air gap, right? So like we do not use OpenAI or anything. It all runs within an air gap framework behind your firewall, and the explainability, right? Because as a business user, I come and say, okay, who is entitled to parental leave? And I get an answer, and the answer seems funny. My next question will be, how do you define exactly entitled to parental leave? Okay, because even if you don't know much about labor law, that there's a 50-page answer to that question, right? And there's a lot of fine print, right? And especially if you're doing something in legal, if you're doing something in finance, if you're doing something in healthcare, often you really, really care about the definition, right? And a lot of the times the reason you need a data analyst team and you email them the question, they take 3 days to answer, is because it's a 3-page SQL query. Right? Because there's a lot of things that you need to exclude and you need to think about and you need to decide what you do with here. So what we are seeing when people are really just starting to use this, there's a lot of iteration. Okay, where people change the question, they change definition, they explain it, really, and it's the same thing that would happen in real life. So table understanding will probably a different model or different task-based model that you can do. And a lot of the LLMs, enable you to do kind of task-specific tuning, right, or agents where this works. The other super useful feature, and that's probably, I think by now, that's the most widely used kind of instruction tune LLM that we have, is just summarization. Okay. A lot of the problems that you have also in the healthcare space, in the finance space, the legal space, there's a lot of boilerplate and there's a lot of text. Okay, right? And if financial disclosure is anything, it's you submit a 200-page disclosure that's primarily intended to hide like 2 sentences that you're legally required to disclose. One of them is on page 82, one of them is page 91, and we hope that no one will notice. right? And you want to be able to extract those, and you want to be able to compare them. And very often, what you want is really, can you just summarize to me in one paragraph what this company does? And it's not in general, it's for a category, right? So you have those 20 or 30 category of things that you care about, right? You can say, just give me a summary in that category. And I'd say those summarization models are, first of all, they're very simple to use. They're zero shot, right? It's like really, just give me a summary on what is this company doing in terms of carbon capture, okay? And you can see it. It makes it very easy to compare a set of companies within a field, right? Just give me 2 or 3 sentences about what each does, right? Because especially with things like responsibility report, very often you can't compare numbers, right? So it's not like financial information you can compare, revenue numbers, expense ratios, margin, PE. Within responsibility reports, very often that's not the case, right? Because people try different policies and do very different things. So summarization is really very often where people begin, right? And then you can have this nice spreadsheet. You come and say, here are 20 companies. Here's like really 2 or 3 sentences about what each of them does. And that's really kind of the starting point of what people need. So at the end, what you do, you combine all of these things. So what you want to have in the end, yes, one nice chart interface where you can ask questions about tables, you can ask questions about figures, right? You can ask questions that make use of the metadata you extracted. You can ask summarization questions. As I mentioned, mostly when really we use the LLMs really more for a UI and interaction mechanism, because in this specific context, the last thing you want is to actually try to answer the question by itself, right? Really, all it should do is just go find the answer somewhere. There are a lot of benefits there. For example, the LLMs have, we fine-tune it for a vertical, right? So for example, we have a healthcare-specific one, but we do not need to fine-tune it for the specific document. So as you update the document, you do not need to do the fine-tuning, because really what the LLM is fine-tuned for is how you formulate queries to a knowledge base, right? But I do not need to know that specific knowledge base. Also, within the knowledge base, a lot of documents are already enriched with metadata, right? That are correctly kind of classified and correctly split. Okay, so I don't need to know like specifically what templates you use. That's already figured out elsewhere, which means that really implementations are faster. Okay, and just the hardware cost and the cost of operating the software are lower for people. Everything I spoke about has public notebooks, public examples online. The links are here. The presentation is going to be public, so you'll have the links. If you need anything else, any other questions, please, contact me. As you know, we're all very early on in this stage. Those things are change on a weekly basis. So I'm very happy to learn as well from your experience, and would be happy to work together on this. Thank you.